Hello, Gracie. Can you hear us? All right. Thank you.
Tracy, she's here just to see the outcome of the market. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's see if we can make it by
Sorry.
15 after.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody
Okay, let's see if we can get started. To begin, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. We need to take a look at the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or additions that you would like to make? If not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second? Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Everybody want to turn your mics on, please? All right, because we did not have a joint meeting in May, there are no minutes to review. So we'll be able to move on to the public hearing portion. Just for the procedural purposes, we have the county planner introduce each case, respond to any questions from the planning commission. Following that, the applicant has an opportunity to address the planning commission and answer questions. Following that, if there's any public comment, we have time for that. All right, Ligon, would you introduce the first case, please?
Sure. The case number subdivision 06-2213. I'll just summarize. Anthony and Linda Clatterback have applied for a by right subdivision of an existing 12.1 acre parcel. The subject parcel is zoned A1 agriculture in the zoning district, minimum parcel size 3 acres. The subdivision would create two new parcels of 3 acres and 3.1 acres and a residue parcel of 6 acres. The subject parcel does not contain a postal address, but is located at the intersection of Repton Mill Road, Good Hope Church Road, and Orange Road. It's identified on Madison County's tax maps as 5712. Everything is in order. I will say everything is filed with the health department. I actually put the VDOT letter in there twice. I do have that letter, but I couldn't find it this afternoon. Then I realized that I think the letter was sent to me from Renee Brown and not Emily. So I was looking through my file, but we did get that well over a month ago. So everything, VDOT's reviewed it and thinks the entrances look okay. They've got everything with the health department filed. So seems, like I said, by right subdivision. So other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, does anyone on the planning commission have questions? Looks pretty straightforward.
Yes, sir.
All right, is the applicant here?
No, I didn't
Apparently
think
not.
Anthony
Okay.
was going to come,
Okay.
but
Any public comment then? If not, can I hear a motion concerning this case?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number S-06-22-13 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so case number S-06-22-13 will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval. All right, case number SU-06-22-14. Dorothy and Ralph Martin have applied for a special use permit to operate an event venue on 3A1 agriculture zone parcels, which they own totaling roughly 154 acres. The applicants are seeking to host wedding receptions and similar events. Per Madison County's zoning ordinance, event venues hosting 15 or fewer events annually are not required to obtain special use permit. The applicants anticipate exceeding 15 events annually. The subject property contains two dwellings addressed as 3033 and 3037 Hebron Valley Road, Madison, Virginia. The parcels are identified on Madison County's tax maps as 31-30B, 31-30E, and 31-30. Ligon, any introduction?
yep. So I know we've talked about it for a few months, and I've been out to the site and met with Miss Martin. She's here. Walked the property. It's 3 parcels of 154 acres. Has a principal dwelling, which is quite a a nice dwelling that could be utilized for some kind of staging or part of the event venue. I wrote a list of conditions. I've communicated those with the applicant, which the applicants indicated that all are suitable to them. The one thing I would note is that we do have a letter from a adjacent property owner. Adjoining property owner, and that's Blair and Alice Johnson, who have they just bought the property and thinking about peace, quiet, and all of those things. I have some concerns. I've been talking to them, going back and forth, and sort of explain to him what the special use is, what it's for, event ordinance, and after kind of going back, I think there's some comfort from them. I don't put words in their mouth, but I think that they understand that the Martins want to be good neighbors, and they're really looking for smaller scale events. They at the venue, and they more than anyone want to make sure all the neighbors are happy, and probably similar to so I don't see it any real differently than maybe living across from a vineyard. To a certain degree, we have people coming in and out, so they've been very nice, and I think that they're probably, from the original letter, feel a little more comfortable. Like I said, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think they feel a little more comfortable with it after we kind of talked about it. So I just want to point that out. I told them I would point it out, but just to please read their letter. If you look at the conditions, and I try to make this, based on comments from VDOT, and you see the letter, and I didn't get formal comments from the health department. I did get an email from Emily, and I have mimicked exactly what she said would be their preference for septic and water and sewer. So I'll just kind of go through. The first thing is it's not transferable. So, if this were to be sold or someone else were to operate it, they would need to come in and have a hearing, go through the same process. Of course, if you have more than 300, Ms. Martin is aware, if you have more than 300 people expected, they would apply for the large-scale outdoor event, and we would let everybody know what's going on. Amplified music ceases at 10:30. Number 4 is one that we haven't done yet, but usually if you see the VDOT comments, they want sort of traffic analysis, engineering. That's kind of they tend to sort of blanket statement that, well, let's see traffic generation data. Traffic generation data for events is kind of hard because, if you're doing a grocery store, you can kind of look at things like the square footage, and you can kind of estimate how many trips that would generate based on the size. Events, I don't really think that's a great request because they are going to vary. You might have some that are very small, you might have some large. So what I thought was a good common ground, and I did talk to Willis about it, he thought it was fine, is to have the applicant just get an engineer to look at the entrance, look at the data. I mean, that road is 700 some trips a day. That's not a lot of trips. I think there is good sight distance, and honestly, the only thing I think they really need to do to make it maybe a little safer is just widen and flare out the entrance. It's a paved driveway. It's a very nice driveway. I think if it's just widen the radiuses, make it where two cars can pass right there in the entrance, I think it'll be fine. But again, I just will let an engineer look at it. I think that's a good way maybe to approach this when we have a little bit of disagreement with maybe, not disagreement, but maybe just, kind of a middle party come in and look at it and say, yeah, this is what I would recommend. So the Martins are okay with that. And then as number 5 is from the health department, just really for their benefit, just to know what the capacity. It's a 4-bath house. So I would imagine they have a pretty big tank there, but at least they can get a handle on how many folks their house could be expected to serve during an event. This number 6 is just essentially what I'm doing is the thought here is to limit it to 2 additional buildings. They have mentioned 30 by 70. I just said 40 by 100, just in case those specs change, and you can see the kind of structure that they want to build. As far as transit occupancy taxes, there is a short-term rental at the house that's occasionally used for short-term rental. A little sidebar is that I think some people get confused in the short-term tax if you use one of some of these platforms, because Airbnb pays state taxes, and a lot of folks see that and think that that's the transit occupancy tax. That's not the case. I was talking to Brian Danny today about it, and it's kind of all over the place. Some platforms submit transit occupancy tax, some don't. In this case, I don't believe it has been. Ms. Martin is looking to see what all her to date. I don't think you've owned it but a year. Is that correct? You've owned the property and you haven't been short-term renting it the whole time. So she'll go back and look at if indeed that was paid. Don't think it was, but she'll get straight with the Commissioner of Revenue by the end of the month on any back transit occupancy taxes that paid. And the 8th one is just obvious. Just if you don't follow this, we can revoke the special use permit and your ability to operate. So traffic, health department, I think the fact that it's going to stay with these owners, if it is transferred, we have the ability to kind of vet the next folks. Don't know if they're going to do that anytime soon or ever, but I think that is a good policy. So any questions from me on it?
Anyone have a question for Ligon? All right, as he points out, this is appropriate for the event venue. It is relatively low impact. Do you know, Ligon, if any other neighbors other than that one letter have been?
That's the only one I've heard from.
Okay. Do all the neighbors know about it then?
Oh, they were all sent letters.
Okay.
Oh, I am a neighbor.
Okay.
You got a letter, right?
No need for a letter. Only a letter of support.
Any other question or comment for Ligon? Okay, does the applicant wish to address the planning commission? No? Okay. All right. Does anyone have a question for the applicant? Again, looks pretty straightforward. Any comments from the public on this? All three. Okay. Can I have a motion on
Steve,
this?
I got a comment
Yes,
to make.
okay.
I actually, when the people sold this property, I moved the stuff out of this house, and this house can accommodate a lot of people.
Yeah, I think what Ligon's working on with the health department is just to verify that what kind of the maximum number of wedding participants could be adequately taken care of with the bathrooms in the house, I think so. And I noticed that if it exceeds that, there's the requirement for portable toilets. Okay, any other question or comment, Mike?
So are you looking for 2 events a weekend or 1 a month or?
Well, probably we start off a little less, and probably, I was thinking maybe 2 a month.
2 a month?
Like that.
I mean, it's very likely won't even hit the 15, but Ms. Martin just wanted to say, if I do go over, I feel like I need to do the right thing, so I appreciate,
We
I mean,
wanted to put up
right.
a pavilion, so spending money on the pavilion, we would like to not have that. But there will be limits on us, so. And I would like to talk to the neighbors that complain, I would like to put them out and talk to them, just to show them what we're going to do. And I don't think they're going to have a problem with it.
And I don't think it's going to be that difficult for them to exceed 15 a year. We have wedding venues that were begun before we did all of this ordinance, and they easily do 30 or 40 a year. So, any other question?
My concern about this is that in the Hebron Valley, the noise is going to spread throughout the valley. Have you thought about any noise dampening?
That is my concern too, because we're going to.
Could you, Alan, could you give her so I can hear?
Thank you. That is my concern too, because we're going to be in the farmhouse when these events take place, and we don't want to be blared out either, any more than, So if the noise is passing through the valley a lot and too much for it, there are ways to put speaker systems around the event venue where it's cranked really loud in the valley. And if it gets too loud, we would probably have to put restrictions on it ourselves, because we don't want to be in that farmhouse with it blaring too loud either. We're going to call it Quiet Hills, the Inn at Quiet Hills. And we do have a concern about it being too noisy as well. So we will try to keep it we will definitely address that as we go along. Does that answer your question? Does that make you feel?
I gather there is now all sorts of technology that
There is, they tell me there
can
is.
dampen
Mhm.
the spread of the noise.
That's what they're telling me. So we're hoping that we
Probably
can
pretty
utilize that some.
Probably pretty pricey.
Yeah. I don't think that this will be not pricey till we're done with it, I'm afraid. And that's why we don't know exactly when we're going to set it up. But this is what we wanted to get approved for before we start.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Did I already ask if there was any public comment? I don't remember, but apparently not. Okay. All right, in that case, can we have a motion on this case?
Mr. Chairman, I have to.
Have to recuse, okay. Francois is recusing herself because she's a neighbor. Yeah. Any motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number SU-06-22-14 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we will be recommending case number SU-06-22-14 to the Board of Supervisors for approval. Thank you. Okay, it looks like case number SU-06-22-15 has been tabled by the applicant. Is that correct, Legan?
Yeah, we need to find some solution or way forward. We're talking about it on this two uses on a parcel. I have kind of looked at this and looked at other ordinances and thought about it, and we've met about it. My feeling about it, I know in the past that has been the interpretation. It says the minimum lot size on uses. I sort of, I feel like that's one way you could interpret it. I wouldn't necessarily interpret it that way. And I know Cardi and I on Friday looked at some other ordinances and they kind of use the same language. And I don't think they interpret that way. But again, I don't see any problem if that's the way you want to interpret it. I guess my recommendation for looking at it would be, I think it's something we can maybe study in a committee. I like to be pretty efficient about trying to find some resolution. In my humble opinion, if you look at the by right uses in C1, which is the same in A1, if there are any two uses in there that could maybe take place on a parcel that you see that's problematic, I don't really see any, but I guess what you could do if you want to preserve the kind of the 3 acres per use or 10 acres per use, is you could simply, add a special use to C1 and A1 that says if you have two uses on a parcel, A1 and C1, that you would get a special use permit to by right uses. And if you have a special use, you already have to get a special use permit. So I guess what I'd like to see is maybe be open-minded to amending this to, do you think a garage is a reasonable special use on a 4.5 acre parcel? I think most of it would say yes. Do you think a daycare could be on an A1 zone parcel at 5.5 acres? I mean, I think it could be in a house. I guess where I sort of come out is on a zoning ordinance, the zoning, the planning commission and the board ultimately controls what's in the zoning ordinance. It's not really the other way around, unless you're like an originalist and say, we can't change this ever. But I would like for us to look at it maybe at a committee, take a quick look at it and see if we can come up with a recommendation. Mr. Ramos just wants to do what it takes to come in compliance. I mean, he's got an architect coming out there, look at the building. We really need to, I feel like, get the lot cleaned up and have some organization, put a fence up and all those things. So he'll do whatever it takes. But if we could look at that, maybe the committee and maybe try to, and again, I've studied it real hard and feel like I can come up with a couple of recommendations that the committee could consider and maybe move this forward. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Pete.
I have a little trouble understanding why a welding shop and an automotive shop can be the same thing. All automotive shops, at some point in time, he's got a car in there and he's working on it and it needs to be welded. So he's not going to be able to weld it because he's doing two uses.
No, they've got the residence there. So it's the
I'm
residence,
sorry, Clay.
it's the residence and then it's the shop. We all agree that welding goes with auto repair. Please.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission. So, at staff level and some board members and Chairman of Planning Commission, we've looked at this and even had Sean Gregg in to see, okay, yes, it's two uses. Is there a path moving forward? We've looked at, when was this facility constructed? Did it come in before 1967, which is zoning and so forth? Ultimately, something that we could explore, and we talked about at a meeting. You have 4.4 acres. So yes, there's a residential component. I'm gonna try to catch all of you, but there's also, that business there. Could you essentially rezone, leave 3 acres or so for the house and rezone that portion for B1? I did go back and look at GIS just because I'm bored. I have nothing else to do. And I did see there are some parcels in the county that have split zoning, if you will, or 2 different zoned pieces on one parcel. So that is an avenue. If ultimately the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors would like to explore that, that could be a method we take with this. But I'm with Ligon as far as, what your minimum uses say in the ordinance. If that's the current climate and desire of the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors today, or does it need to be revisited? And certainly that's the marching orders that we work off of, is what the preference is. So if there's going to be some modifications, currently right now, it does appear a minimum 3 acres, but that's the pulse and the desire of the bodies before us today. But that is an option we considered for this tabled applicant, is could you rezone that portion to B1? Thank you.
Okay, so there are some options being presented to the applicant that he may be able to use. Any other questions? Okay, no questions then. All right, Ligon, it looks like we have on item 5, 2 items. I think, pretty sure you've mentioned these before, but we're reaching the point where these are ready to look at.
These are just sort of quick, what I hope are kind of quick and easy
Yeah.
amendments. And if you look at the partial bond release, I'm going to pass this out. You can just pass those down. This is just something that came up. I think it was over the South Park. They by yeah, I'm just say by Food Lion. I was going, what is that called? I go there every day. Food Lion with Mr. Weaver. Wheelan, that's right, Wheelan. So when they complete, there's, in this case, the ENS bonded portion, it's multiple phases, and they completed a portion of it and wanted to, I think we were holding a $70,000 bond. Wanted a portion, understandably wanted a portion of it back. That's not in our county code. It is allowable, put a state code, pretty commonplace. Sean had passed, if you look at the 4-23, I just cite what's in the state code as far as partial release in the bond, and that's fine. Sean's also just recommended some language that talks about that we'll go inspect it. It's really not a problem to do it that way, as long as, the measures are according to the plan and they're installed. And in this case, Matthew Ayler could go check off and say they're in here. Then we can release the bond, at least a portion of it. So commonplace, most places. So just be I would take 4-2 and 3 and just sort of incorporate some of what Sean has recommended as well. So if everyone kind of gets this, I think it's a pretty straightforward. We could potentially do that at July joint meeting. Everybody's in the room here, except for Ms. Hoffman. But other than that, everybody was in agreement.
So this is, if not in compliance with state, this would be bringing it to parallel the state code.
Right.
Okay. Does the state give the county the option not to do this, or is this a requirement to be in compliance?
Let's ask.
It's required. So it's a compliance issue then.
Correct.
Okay. That's pretty straightforward then.
Yes.
Yeah, we could probably cite the state code now and release it, but we just might as well put it in the ordinance, and
Mhm.
that way it's there.
The
the instruction for us as staff is do what the state says, and we'll catch up to the order. Normally, you would not hear me say that, but the state's requiring it, we will do what the state says, but we need to get it in writing.
Okay, any question? Any other question?
The only question I got about this, or the only heartburn I got with this, and I was in the road building for a long time. You build a road in the summertime, and when you got it all finished, and seed and grass comes up, and you just finished the road, and you release the bond on it, and then we go into the winter. And when you go into the winter, conditions change drastically. So we've released a bond, and we get into the winter, and the project's not a year old, and all of a sudden the road starts to come apart. Where do we get the money to put that road back together with? That's my concern.
Mr. Elliott, I think that's a fair point. Unfortunately, our hands are tied to some extent. What it really comes down to is having road standards and engineering standards and holding the people developing the infrastructure, holding their feet to the fire while it's being built. The better engineered it is, the less unraveling you're going to have, as you've described.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. A lot of this kind of plays out where they'll come in for a partial release, unless it's a smaller development or something. They may come in just final, like you get bond releases on some smaller projects. I think I saw one today for like $1,000. On these larger ones, generally it's an engineer that's submitting for a request of reduction. Usually what you wind up at the end, you have about a 10% remaining if they have satisfied 90% of the projects using 100% percentage. So your 10% now, there could be huge catastrophic failure, sure, but generally that 10% is where you have that surety bond for a year's point to hold. So hopefully that event doesn't occur, but you have enough monies left to cover that. I think we talked about this last time, but there was some retainage that thankfully we held back for Fox Hunter. I don't know if that's a lane or drive. It's off of Fishback Road that we had to use to improve that condition. So we have some history in the county to, not often, but to have to finish out or fix an area of the road. But definitely you want to have some retainage there or bond that's still being held for that purpose. I don't know if that fully answers or addresses your concern, Pete.
One other point with it, if these roads are being taken into the state system, then obviously they become a state problem. If they remain private roads, just as a practical matter, I think most developers want to make sure, particularly after they've invested, because you invest so much on the front end, if the road is falling apart, they're going to have a hard time selling the lots.
Any other question or comment?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm looking at the sheet you just passed out.
Mhm.
What is that?
So that I had on the bold, I had recommended some language for ordinance amendment for partial release of bond. That's at 4-23, I believe, at the very bottom. Sean has sent me this a while back when we talked about it, and he just sent it to me the other day, today, or a couple of days ago. I'm just going to incorporate this language. I might edit it a little bit, but I'll be sure that I've sent it to Sean. Just going to put some of this language in there as well.
And just to follow up with that, we would need to have a public hearing on this because it's a new ordinance. We will hear input probably from some of Mr. Elliott's friends. And I certainly hope so, because I think we need to make sure we get this right and we protect the county as much as we can. And then we just act from there. So the next step would be, after there is sort of an internal agreement about what the ordinance should say, we will advertise it for public hearing, and then we see where we go from there.
So this is not language that you're proposing to put in the ordinance, right?
Yeah, so that on 4-2, where I wrote, 4-23
Yeah.
periodic partial, have it all underlined.
Okay.
I would also incorporate most of this language into that. I'll just sort of work with Sean to incorporate that as well.
I see.
So that's all. I just wanted to
All
point
right,
that out.
so there is a context for it because standing alone, this doesn't say a whole lot to me.
Yeah, and I think on this standing alone, what I wrote just recites what's in the state code. It would work, but it's nothing wrong with also just putting, this in there as well. So it'll be a combination. And I'd like to just move forward if it's all right. Just move forward next month.
Okay, any other question or comment for Lee?
I got one.
Okay, Mike?
So is Matt the one who decides what the percentages are? So if they're asking for a partial release, is he the one, or is this something that we're even going to look at putting in an ordinance of how much?
Yeah, I
How
think
much of a percentage of the money that they would get back? If, say, for example, if they had most of all the work done, but yet 25% of the grass is not growing because seed wasn't good or whatever, where does that fall in?
so. I believe what would be a letter from the project engineer saying these things have been completed. The engineer is going to do the bonds based on the engineer's estimate. And I believe there's also a markup that we put on that estimate as well. Maybe, I think it's at 20%. So we have that we're holding that funds, and then the engineer is going to say these items, because they do itemize. They'll itemize the bond. These items, item A, B, and C at 15,000, at 10,000 have been completed, inspected. Please can we remove them? Work something to that effect. They wouldn't just come in and say, hey, we're done half of it and you get $35,000. I'm just saying it's a $70,000 bond. They would have to show us and itemize what has been done. We have to verify that's been done. And a lot of it sometimes it just comes to, you've got to get grass growing. Sometimes it's very simple to get the bond back. And I think that was one of the hangups on South Park. We were just waiting for and they delayed, didn't do it. Then it becomes winter, and so but there are other features that were put in, stormwater features that we could have released a bond on. That we knew were installed properly and inspected. We could have released some then. So, to answer your question. Okay.
Yeah. Most.
Are there, let me rephrase that. Are there any other things other than the stormwater, soil erosion, so forth, that are bonded like this?
So the road would be, the road in South Park was not. It was constructed, inspected on site by VDOT, as they had to go back and do a few improvements. Infrastructure, utilities are usually bonded, but of course that really wouldn't be that's the RSA. So really you got your roads. The most commonly bonded item that we work with in the county is erosion and sediment bonding. And usually it's just, individual homeowners bonding $1,000. South Park was that was a lot of, so far, there was a lot of earthwork and a lot of engineering work for stormwater and retention. And there's a lot of structures in there for that. So that was a pretty big project. $70,000 bond was a pretty significant bond. So that'll be the biggest we'll probably really see. Most of them are much smaller in nature, much more easier to deal with. Yes, sir.
Bill Ligon, one of the questions I got, let's say that the engineer contacts your office or whatever, and he wants to get a partial bond release done, and we go out and we give him the biggest percentage of the bond. Now they're starting to, because he's got the roads in and the settlement and erosion control in, now we're ready to start developing it. And doing the development of it, we fill all those ponds up with silt because we didn't do the right things, had a major storm, and now that pond is sitting there and it's full of silt. And we don't have enough money to clean it out, put it back in operation like it needs to be. Then is the builder the developer, who's in charge, what happens then?
Well, that's why we, the engineers and our staff, I mean, that's really why we have those eyes on the project. But ultimately, if there's a disagreement or something is done incorrectly, I guess we go to court. I mean,
I don't mean to. So our stormwater program is run through DEQ. So in this case, if you've satisfied a lot of your infrastructure stuff and now you're going up vertically with the building, then my thoughts is DEQ, they administer the program. You mess up a pond, you're going to have to come in. They have the arm, if you will, the strength to come in and do enforcement. And either you correct it or you'll pay a civil penalty and still correct it. So all that would run through the state.
Lincoln, I'm trying to figure out who the decision maker for the county is with regard to consideration of release of a portion of a bond.
So there's sort of two parallel processes. One, the erosion and sediment that's containing the site, making sure measures are in place to stabilize the site from the erosion sediment standpoint. Like Jonathan said, the other is stormwater, and anything over an acre is going to be managed by, if we had an engineer on staff, we could manage it, but we outsource that to DEQ, the Woodbridge office. So they would be, and he's correct, they'd be ultimately responsible for reviewing anything that was put in, installed, making sure that it meets their requirements, as VDOT would be responsible for roads.
That doesn't quite answer my question. This isn't limited to, obviously, the storm control. But for the county, this contemplates the county making a decision to release a portion of the bond. And my question is, who's the decision maker within the county?
Well, on the ENS side, it would be Matt. He would look at the work. If it's work, the engineer says it's been done. I mean, this is how all municipal governments pretty much do this. So, Matt would be responsible for the ENS measures, making sure they've been installed properly. Engineer says he has. He goes and checks it. We look at what it costs, what it was itemized for. We can release that part of the bond. Jonathan, you have anything else?
Yes. So we're unique in this way. The reason why you're only hearing one primarily name, which is our erosion and sediment control technician, or whatever the title. I don't mean to offend anybody. In other localities that may own their own roads, or they may own their own water and sewer, those bonds, those departments would sign off on and say yes, either to a town manager or someone. Yes, Department of Public Works, they've satisfied their storm, they've satisfied the streets. We don't own streets here. So if there's a street that's going to be turned over into the state system, VDOT would inspect that, which is the example he gave you for Wheeling property. The utilities, we don't own utilities. So in this particular one, just like when Yoder's extended their water line there, that's RSA. They handle all inspections. So any of that bond component would be with them. So traditionally, mostly the only item we look at here in the county would be an erosion component, which is either seeding or stormwater. But again, the larger stuff, such as storm ponds, would go to DEQ for review and comment anyway. So before Matt signs off on that, he would have had their comments to make sure those items have been addressed before we release the bond. But all of our bond release and decision points strictly have to do with an erosion component, because we don't own roads.
So
or
Matt
utilities.
would, in the case of stormwater, would rely as the basis for his decision on DEQ, right?
That is correct. He can certainly look and see. He can control the vegetation point. That's just obvious to walk up and see, is that vegetation meet requirement. But storm structures, ponds, inlets, those are things that he would get DEQ's comment on. So that's why we don't have a lot. And if it gets into those other components, VDOT's going to kick in, or the utility provider on the utility would kick in.
Actually, Matt does inspect those ponds.
Right. He does so through the
And-
guidance, though, and adherence of DEQ, but you are correct.
And he, I will attest for Matt, that he does go by the book. He's inspected several of mine, and he doesn't let anything go.
I appreciate that. And that's generally what I say. There's only been maybe a couple of calls in my tenure, but that is correct. And I appreciate that, Mr. Son.
Okay, so if I'm understanding now, then Matt would be the county person who inspects and determines if it's in compliance. I may be misunderstanding, but I think what Peter was asking is, once that's done, who is in charge of the actual saying this is, you can have the money back?
So Matt sends a letter up to our finance department to notify them that this has been, so there's a request that comes, whether it's the engineer or whoever's making that request. He has his response letter with that, and then that comes up as a request to finance to release whatever the amount of funds is.
So it's coming to administratively to somebody in the finance department.
Correct.
Okay.
And we have that letter on file, the original request, and that inspection response that's requesting release of those funds.
Okay, so he's doing the inspection and they're doing the actual release of the money. Okay.
Okay.
Any other question or comment on this? Okay, Ligon, the only thing I don't see in this part, the bold print, is any mention of the county inspecting to confirm. Is that,
Yeah, I think what
is that part of some of
I
this
think
Code of
what,
Virginia?
yeah. I think that's what Sean had, this portion right here talks a little bit.
Oh,
The
say,
county shall have 30 days from the application of the landowner to inspect the project to confirm that all work has been done in compliance.
okay, so you're going to be kind of
We're gonna-
merging this
we're
with
gonna-
that. Okay,
that's right.
I see. Any other comment or question on this? All right, so you're almost at the point where we're ready to bring
Yeah,
this.
we'll look at it again at the workshop,
Mhm.
and the plan is just to move forward in July 6th. I think that's the one.
For public hearing.
You're gonna maybe run out of daylight as far as that being an advertisement. The workshop is on the 15th, correct? Sean,
Sounds right, yeah.
how many weeks of advertising?
2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll have it. I've already figured it out. Those last two, it'll be in the paper the last 2 Thursdays. And then if that last Thursday in June is 5 days before the meeting, which is the number of days you have to have. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So it's tight, but it's doable.
we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any other question or comment? Okay, you want to move on to the next one?
Next one should be easier.
Good luck with that.
Nothing wrong with asking questions, because I learned too, and it wasn't necessarily my strong point. It was working with Matt and some of these things, so I've learned a lot. The last few weeks. Moving and storage is a by right use in M2. So when we have done these, I know the one, allowable by right in M1 and M2. We have moving and storage facility. We've got someone who's interested in several areas that are business zoned. And I'm just simply, if we want to go the route having people apply to make the property industrial, that's fine. But if you look at most ordinances, usually storage facilities, mini storage units, they go by different names. Usually it's a special use in business. So this has been something I've kind of had on a little to-do list for a while. If it's something that seems reasonable, I just thought, since we don't have a definition of moving a storage facility, if you look at that definition, I borrowed that from our friends in Page County, and just simply move it as a special use in B1. I don't know when we would get an application for one. I think there's one that's a B property, a business property that would apply, but you still have the same oversight as a rezoning. I just think it's a more logical place than changing it to industrial, and really it's more of a kind of a general business use as I see it. Plus, we're on 29. I think we're probably, whether regardless of your opinion on storage units, I think our location makes it a popular spot, and we've had several people that are looking for storage type facilities. I think that's a good use if it's a special use permit. I mean, look at things like buffering and landscaping and maybe some concealment. I think it could be something that we might see a few more applications in the future. But if they want to go the M1 route, that's fine too. I just thought if we could put it in a B1 and that would be, and put a definition in that's pretty straightforward, that would also work well.
Any question for legal? If not, I have one. I don't know quite how far back this moving and storage facility was put in the zoning ordinances, but when I read through it, it sounds more to me like a warehouse facility, something larger, in other words. My recommendation would be, I agree that the mini storage units are appropriate for B1, but I would call them that. Don't try to call them moving or storage buildings. I'm not sure that the two definitions are exactly the same.
Well, one of the questions I got to Ligon is, why do we want to do it by special use? I mean, if B1 is where we want to put business, and they are essentially business, I just not quite understanding why we want to do it by special use.
Yeah, well, to both ones, I think the county we've obviously considered moving and storage facility to be mini storage units. That's what's
Well, we fit them in as
right.
that in the past,
I mean,
yeah.
so I was just using that language. If we want to strike through it, just call it mini storage facilities and use that same definition. I've got no problem with that at all. That's fine. Just saying mini storage units, and that's what it's called in a lot of ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
To Pete's question, storage units. I don't think there's anything wrong with making it by right. I don't. They're usually not controversial, and I'm sure if you look at zoning ordinances and just compare, you probably see quite a few of them. They are. It is a by right use. I just think it would be something that I don't think they're controversial, but I just give it a chance to have review, maybe put conditions on it. It's kind of an aesthetic thing. They don't generally look super, but so that was my sort of thought, is at least if it's a special use, you could really have the ability, depending on the site where it's at, to really kind of look at buffering and things like that to sort of minimize the fact that storage units aren't, they're not exactly, the works of great architecture by any means.
But still, in B1 by right, Ligon, we would still have the right to say, we want this type of fence, we want this kind of shading. And if someone come in and B1 by right and the board decide, well, that's not the right place for that, they can stop it. And even if it's B1 by right.
Right. Well, we'd still look at a site plan, because in all likelihood, they would be, the only thing about that, if it's by right, I don't know we would have the ability, as long as they met setbacks and different things, I don't know if we would really have the ability to really put teeth in, maybe some, and again, aesthetic kind of oriented thing. So that's sort of why I sort of like it to be a special use, but you would also have some chances at the, at the site plan, but I don't know if you could turn it down alone. If they didn't want to, the good thing about the special use permit, you really can place those conditions on it if you have a really a sort of a logical connection to place a condition on it.
What about it, Sean?
You look at the over.
I think the safer way to do it is certainly with special use permit.
Well, they can pull it up.
Because of the reasons that Ligon indicated. The real problem with trying to do it at the site plan, I mean, if it's by right, there's very little we can say in terms of the aesthetics of what's being built. and you can get some eyesores. I know some people who are minimalists whenever it comes to the aesthetics of a building. Some people say my house is one of those, but the idea is to, encourage things, but we also don't want to allow just about anything, because that will actually have a negative impact in terms of attracting other businesses.
Okay, Faye, did
If
you,
you allow trash to be built, you're going to get a lot of trash.
Faye, did you have?
Okay, so it's like a lot of things I didn't realize I had an opinion on it, but I do about some things. Considering as you ride along and you see, and I've had a little bit of experience with having to store some things, temporarily for some of my mother moving, etc. Couple of things. Do we put any kind of restrictions on what can be stored there as far as outside the building? Such as there's one that I used in Harrisonburg, which was very nice. And at the time, I think all it had were the buildings. This is 25 years ago. And you went into your little unit, when you rented it. Now, and I'm not saying it's unsightly, but they've opened that up to where they have a lot of RVs, a lot of other storage vehicles in a special place behind the long building. They expanded that. And I just noticed that a few weeks ago. So I don't know. I mean, it could be unsightly. It could be, what would we allow to be stored, say, outside of our storage unit kind of thing? And the other thing is that I would have a little bit of concern about, because the very thing we're talking about, that they're not always so attractive. They let the outside go. And of course, they're probably abused by a lot of the users and whatever, because it's not their property and we know what happens there. But is there anything that says, for instance, what if they don't rent anymore? What happens to it? I mean, and I know plenty, we have right in the town of Madison and all around really, where things were started as a business and they were abandoned for some reason or another. And they're still abandoned and they're unsightly. So,
Yeah.
Are there any, you can't make a person stay in business, but is there any recourse for making sure that doesn't happen with a great big facility or, taking up?
Yeah.
That kind of thing worries me.
I would probably discourage you from trying to think of every situation, if it was, but I do believe doing this, and that's why I like special use permits, because I do believe if someone did come out, and they vary in size. It's the one that one's proposing is a 5-acre site, which is fairly small. But there could be, again, I think our location on 29 makes it very attractive. So there could be a much larger one. Then you could really get into a special use permit, almost like a solar panels. You'd have a decommissioning process. If you're only X amount full, you need to, there's mechanisms, I believe, that you could decommission even a storage site if it was written properly. So I think in this case, probably less is more. If we did change it to mini storage units and went with the definition, if that looks good, put it as a special use permit and just sort of see what comes our way. And if those questions and concerns, depending on the size or there, we could definitely think about writing a condition that could address those concerns.
Francois had a question about is it possible to quickly put a GIS up and overlay the B1? She wanted to see what the B1 zoning is in Madison, where it is.
Is Alan awake?
I know we do have an overlay on the GIS maps for zoning.
Yeah, do you mind going to the GIS, Alan, and going on the zoning layer?
That would give us some idea of where we might be looking at this also, yeah.
Yeah, I'll show
That
you
was
the
still
one.
at that, Steve.
Hmm.
You could bring a piece of property in here and say, I want to rezone this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it could still be a rezoning, so it's not necessarily that's what.
Zoning at the very bottom.
Business.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of zoom in if you can.
Yeah, and one of
Just zoom
the requirements on the B1 is proximity to main highway. I think, I'm not exactly how it's worded, but it's something like that.
Yeah, so you can see most of the B1 is right along 29.
Okay,
And
what's,
if you go
which-
down, this particular one is down on 29. Keep going down south. It's
okay, and it's,
yeah, just keep on moving down to the south. There's a piece of B1. That's Wolftown Hood. Keep going south if you don't mind, Alan. They're fighting you. So there's a little
Way
piece
down
of
there, that
B1
one.
right at the very bottom, right down, I think right there, that little red, right, go up, right there. Is that 7 acres?
okay, so it's the reddish color.
Yeah, it's red. Mhm.
Okay.
I did too.
The yellow looks
9
like
acres,
it's
that's
probably
it right there.
residential.
Oh, that's the glass place that is selling property. It's beside the church. It's kind of in between the church and the Southern Grace.
Oh, the Dawsons. Yeah, okay.
They were gonna put a glass shop or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
The majority of B1 is on or near 29. Then.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a few parcels down 29, but most of it's in and around Madison, Brightwood.
Might be wrong, but when that piece of property right there was zone B1, I think there were certain conditions where only certain things could be built there.
Really? That's why we need you around.
Yeah.
And where would that be written?
And the conditions where the approval was.
So where is the approval?
Good reason not to.
In,
Okay, good. Francois, did that answer your
so,
question?
yeah.
Okay.
So I guess for right now, I mean, if it need more time to look at this, we can do that. But if we're going to move forward with the bonding release in July, if we change this to mini storage units, use this definition and added it as a special use permit, would that be something that you feel comfortable? I mean, everybody's in the room here. Would that be comfortable if we did that for a July hearing?
If I might suggest, wouldn't it be more appropriate that this go to a workshop first?
bring it to the workshop.
I'm probably going to give you the exact same thing here at the workshop,
But
but
you would incorporate it in.
yeah,
But
that's
it
fine.
also
So-
means that everybody sitting here would have had the opportunity to look into this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
All right.
probably a good idea.
Okay, yeah, we can look at it 10. Nope, not a problem.
I mean, it's not time sensitive, is it? It's, if it goes to August, it's
yeah,
not.
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it sounds like probably we have some questions that we need to kind of iron out, you know. Any other question or comment for Ligon on this?
Yeah, one.
Yeah, okay.
So, Ligon, is this B1 parcel here? Is that something somebody's proposing to do some mini storage units on?
Possibly correct. Mhm.
What's the? So I was going through all the by right uses B1. I don't really see anything that necessarily would have the same footprint, just building wise,
Mhm.
not counting parking lots and stuff like that. As a mini storage, I wasn't sure what the pros and cons were of. Let's just say there wasn't this guy who wanted to build mini storage units on his B1 parcel, and it was just A1, and he wanted to get it rezoned. Is there any pro or con to rezoning something B1 versus M1 as far as bringing it back? Or just basically what I'm getting at is this guy just want to avoid paying 5 years back taxes from upzoning his
Oh, no.
parcel
That- It's not
M1?
in, it's not in land use. It's anyway. I just think M1 sort of is just to me, it just kind of sends the, I don't know, maybe just, it sort of seems like, I think industrial, I don't necessarily think of, it was really more, that was my feeling, is that if we're going to have these requests coming, so having little industrial spots here and there, it just, to me, seems like a more, more common, at least in other ordinances. Not that that totally matters, but I just think it's just would make more sense for it to be a special use.
Looking there, and Clay may remember this, but the big issue with that right there when it got rezoned was spot zoning. And I don't know if it's still a big issue in the county. It used to be, but spot zoning was a big thing at one time. They didn't want to do it unless something else was around it. I don't know where that stands now, but that was a big issue with this piece of property when it was done.
And that's one that people bring up a lot. In my opinion, just sort of if you spot zone is not really used anymore because the idea is that you can't mix different uses together, which used to sort of be the thought was everything had to be separate. Now I think communities and places are much more open to the idea that you could have mixture of uses and things as long as there's some compatibility. So I'm sure that was you could say it's spot zoning M1, but again, I mean, does anyone think that having many storage units there, regardless of the mechanism, whether you rezone it or get a special use permit, does that look like something? Does that area seem like an area would be reasonable? I mean, I think so. To be determined, but
Well, that's what, probably half a mile or so from Shelby, where you already have mini storage
on the
units.
other side,
But we would probably like to see these a little bit better screened.
right? Correct. Yep.
Yeah, that especially supports the special use idea, yeah. Any other question or comment for Ligon on this? Okay, so it looks like maybe a workshop
Yeah,
for
we'll look at
this
a workshop.
and then proceed from there. Okay. Okay, does anyone have any other item that you want to bring up? Or do we have any item from the public? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. For us, it was.
All right, since everybody's sitting here, I guess we're all staying. Like to call the Board of Supervisors portion of this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Ms. Hoffman's not with us. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anything we need to add to the agenda this evening, gentlemen? Anything?
Then, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, public comment. Public comment.
Clay,
Yes, sir.
I got something I'd like to say in public comment, not pertaining to anything we've said here tonight, but I've been thinking about this ever since the accident, well, not the accident, but what went on in Texas. And one of the real concerns that I got is our kids. And when you go out to the high school and they change classes, and we got that walkway that goes from the annex to the high school, and all those kids walk from the annex to the high school. That's a state road that comes down in front of the school there. I can ride down through there with my gun and my rack. The fear I got there, if that was enclosed, somebody can't ride down that road when classes are changing and do a real harm to our kids. So I think that someone needs to talk to the school board and take a serious look at enclosing that so our kids are protected. Thank you.
Thank you. We will. Other public comment? All right. Thank you, Pete. Let's go right into cases. Case number S-06-22-13. Anthony and Linda Clatterbuck have applied for a by right subdivision of an existing 12.1 acre parcel. The subject parcel is zoned A1 agriculture, and in this zoning district, the minimum parcel size is 3 acres. The subdivision would create 2 new parcels of 3 acres and 3.1 acres and a residue parcel of 6 acres. The subject parcels does not contain a postal address, but is located at near the intersection of Repton Mills Road, Route 607, and Good Hope Church Road, Route 616, and Orange Road, Route 230. The parcel is identified on Madison County Tax Map as 57-12. Ligon, you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Anybody have any questions for Ligon? To the public. To the public. Bunch of people watching us.
I think Gracie's online.
Ah, well,
There you go.
this is like a record for us. All right. No public comment. Back to the board. What do you all want to do?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve case number S-06-22-13.
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. All right. Case number SU-06-22-14. Dorothy and Ralph Martin have applied for a special use permit to operate an event venue on 3 A1 zone parcels. 3 A1 agriculture zone parcels, which they own, totaling roughly 154 acres. The applicants are seeking to host wedding receptions and similar events. Per Madison County zoning ordinance, event venues 15 or fewer events annually are not required to obtain a special use permit. The applicant anticipates exceeding 15 events annually. The subject property contains 2 dwellings addressed 3033 and 3037 Hebron Valley Road, Madison, Virginia. The parcels are identified on Madison County tax maps as 31-30B, 31-30E, and 31-30. Anybody have any questions? Ligon, you have anything to add?
No, I think we have a good set of conditions that will make sure that it's run properly, and I feel very confident that the Martins are going to do a nice job and be good neighbors.
Questions for Ligon?
No, but Mr. Chairman, I do have a comment to make to Ms. Martin. I do share the concerns that there are with regard to noise. However, I am encouraged by your statement that you're reaching out to your neighbors and that you will monitor the situation and adopt any necessary abatements should there be problems in the future. So I wish you well with it.
All right. Ms. Martin, anything to add? All right. Questions for Ms. Martin?
I've got, I don't know the question. Ms. Martin, what do you know about Hebron Valley? I got somewhere to go with this. What do you know about the Hebron Valley?
Not a whole lot. We've only been there it'll be 3 years in October.
All right. Because I'll tell you, I mean, having grown up here, there are 3 icons in Madison County. One of them is the Hebron Valley. One of them is Old Rag Mountain. One of them is Graves's, where the lodge and stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
Most everywhere I've gone and I've lived out of the county a number of years in my life, everybody I talk to that's ever been around here knows those 3 things. When Francois did Revelations there, I was on the planning commission at the time, and she called me and had me come to her house to talk about the Hebron Valley and what my vision was, my personal vision was about that, and what did I think the county's vision was for the Hebron Valley. Obviously, in my opinion, she's done a superb job of putting in the tasting room and winery there, and I'm very proud of what she's done. It's very much in keeping with the Hebron Valley. Hebron Valley is pristine, so this is a little bit bittersweet for me. I am in favor of it. I am encouraged by the fact that others from out of the county will come and experience just standing on your property and looking around 180, 360 degrees and seeing what Madison County has to offer. But it's bittersweet to me because I really, Hebron Valley is so pristine, huh?
You don't want to see it develop.
I don't want to see it develop. That's right.
I mean, you were in
Let's just
fan of it
stop.
flooding it, but
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
So anyhow, make us proud that I think we're probably in agreement that we're going to approve this. I don't know yet until there's a vote, but whatever, make Madison County proud about.
We will
this,
do our
okay?
best. We will try. I think just seeing the valley, for the 3 years that we have been here, I share your view, and I do not want to see it developed either. And I do want it to stay pristine and lovely like it is. So
Okay.
I think we share the same views.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
It's a beautiful place. Some of the best agriculture in Madison County is in the Hebron Valley. All right. Other questions for Ms. Martin? All right, back to the board. We have 8 conditions that are proffered here, all laid out by our zoning administrator, and then the planning commission passed. Anybody need to go back over those? Please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I'll read them.
Go
into the
ahead.
record.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number SU-06-22-14 as recommended by the Planning Commission with the following conditions. Number one, that's the special use permit shall not be transferable or assignable to another individual, entity, or third party unless public notice is provided and an additional public hearing is held in accordance with section 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia. Number two, events with an expected attendance of 300 employees or more will adhere to Madison County's large-scale outdoor events ordinance. Number three, all amplified music/sound will cease by 10:30 p.m. Number four, the site's existing entrance and exit will be designed and upgraded as recommended by a licensed engineer, and the recommended entrance and exit design will be installed on or before December 31st, 2022. Number five, a written evaluation or letter from the OSE, on-site soil evaluator, certifying that the proposed wastewater for the on-site sewage disposal system for the dwelling addressed as 3037 Hebron Valley Road will be completed and provided to the county planner on or before August 15th, 2022. If there are any events that are expected to exceed the capabilities of the drain field, temporary bathroom facilities will be provided. Number six, future permanent event venue structures will be limited to a single reception event pavilion not to exceed 40 feet by 100 feet in size and a standalone bathroom building. Any additional structures, buildings associated with the event venue will require amending the special use permit and require public notice and a public hearing in accordance with section 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia. And number seven, as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue, any arrears transient occupancy tax for the single short-term rental addressed as 3037 Hebron Valley Road will be paid on or before June 30th, 2022, and subsequently all transit occupancy taxes will be paid monthly. Whoops, where'd it go? And number eight, failure to adhere to the stated conditions of the special use permit would result in the revocation of the special use permit and the ability to operate an event venue use on the subject parcel. That's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? I've got one for you, and it's not a condition or anything. I guess it's directly to you, Miss Martin. Coming from the Towel side, the sight distance into your driveway is not very good. If you're going to have big events, think about it. Maybe do something about it. A sign or something just informal would be super, super helpful. Not a condition by any means, but just something there. I've come around that curve a lot of times, and it's dangerous, which is what it is. You cut down your bushes, which we appreciate. All right,
Mr. Chairman, I was just advised that my number 2 condition, I said 300 employees. I meant attendees.
Well, it's good to the county attendees. All right,
Or 300 employees would they?
do you amend your motion?
I amend my motion to
Second. Do you amend it? There you go. Motion's amended and the second is amended. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, and Mr. Ramos's case has been tabled. Any further business this evening, folks? It's a pleasure of the board.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all.